How's it going, gurus, and welcome back to the IR Gurus channel. My name is Nick, and we are back here today to discuss the layouts and really the overall designing your layout of your incidents within SOAR, as well as your incident creation wizard and your tasks. I hope things have been going well for you. I hope the other videos have been hitting home and you guys like them and they have been working for you. Of course, if you guys have any recommendations on videos, go ahead and drop a comment below letting me know. But if this video does help you, then please give me a like and a subscribe, and we'll have more videos to come. All right, so let's dive into this. Of course, in the first section here, we're going to jump into the customization settings. That'll actually land us on the layouts page here. And that's primarily where we're going to be today. We'll jump over to tasks in just a little bit, but most of the actual layouts and customizations to SOAR and to the incidents for SOAR and stuff like that are all going to be here in the layout section. What we're going to do is the first section here, we're going to have the new incident wizard. So the way that we're going to view this is each one of these sections here is going to be its own individual page in which we're actually describing what that page will be. And what I mean by page is open up a new incident here or new incident wizard. And on the left-hand side, you see these different sections we're going to be filling out. These are the pages where we're going to house certain types of information. That way we can kind of consolidate them into certain sections. So if we come back here, you can see these are the ones that are built by default, of course. You can add a new one. We call them steps. We add a new step here by clicking add step. And then in here, this actually allows you to hit the customization setting here, which we can give the step a label or a name, such as we've got describe the incident here. So we can add, call it test for now. Of course, if we wanted to as well, we can actually define some kind of condition as well of when this is played. The first page or the first step obviously cannot have a condition on it, but move this down here. Of course, you can move steps using the arrows here, so you can move up and down to place it exactly where you want it to be. And then once you get it into a place, as long as, like I said, it's not that first step, you can actually click on this customization thing and you can add any conditions that you want. So these conditions can be whatever field is built into the system, or of course, if you've got any custom fields, those can be a condition as well. But you can fill out the, select which field you want. You can select which kind of operator you want to use, and then, of course, whatever the value you want to compare that to over on this side here. I'm going to close this one. We won't be using that one for now because we already have all these other steps here. So play around in these other steps. Of course, on the within the steps, you can see that they're color coordinated. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the purple ones are related to fields. So any field that is created within the incidents, either a field that is built into the system by default, or if you add any custom fields, which you can of course add custom field up here, those are going to show up purple. The way that you can add a custom field, of course, is by clicking add field. And then up in here, you have different types of fields that we can add. So you can have either a date picker or a date time picker. You can have a text or a text area. Text areas are good for bulk text where you're having a lot of text input. Of course, it can also be used for rich text as well. So if you want to be able to do things like creating links or something like that using HTML, you can do that in the text area as well. Of course, we've got numbers if you just want to provide a number to that field. We also have the ability to add either a select or a multi-select field. And then, of course, lastly, we've got the Boolean, which is either yes, no, true, false, whichever one you know that as. We can select if we select something like the text, we can see here that we can give it a label, which is just a name. So like over here, we see address. We could name that address right here kind of thing. It'll automatically create the API name. And then, of course, we can provide it a placeholder if we would like, so that we can demonstrate what we're kind of looking for. We can also provide a tooltip to describe exactly what this field is meant to be used for. And then, of course, on the last section here, we can decide if or how this is going to be required. Of course, everything is normally set to optional, but if you wanted to make this always required, essentially that would mean that to even open an incident, this would have to be filled out. Um, the other selection here we have is on close. So basically, you can't close the incident until this is filled out. We'll touch on this again in just a little bit when we get to close incident. But those are the different options that you give it here. Oh, I wanted to touch on in the selects. You also have the ability to add whatever the select options are going to be. And then if we add a couple of options in H, we also have the ability to select if one of them should be deep. Then what we can do is we can also decide if there's going to be a blank option. One other thing that you can do with a lot of these incidents is you can actually track change times. So when you track a change time, essentially what that allows you to do is if this task, when this task is at a certain value throughout the entire incident, every time that task gets changed, we can actually track additional information on it within the metrics section of the task. So if you ever see when you see the stats and timeline, when you come down here, we've got these different things like right here, we've got phases, or well, this is the owner. So this is the owner field. And then you can see here that it got changed from John Doe, which it sat at for 23 days, 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 44 seconds. And then now it's been active on tier 1 analyst for 2 days, 9 hours, 20 minutes, and 19 seconds. So you can do that with every single one of your fields. If you were to be interested in doing something like that, you would just do that by hitting the track changes and times on this side. All right, so that's fields. Of course, we have views. So in the views section, what we can do is we can add any of these views, which are basically pre-built. And they're called views, so we'll call them views here. It's a pre-built view that has a collection of certain data. So essentially, these are built in where they grab maybe a couple different fields from up here and they toss them in, such as the address one. So when we get to the test, the address one, so we dropped the address in here. So we've got this HTML block, which is just creating a spacer, and then we've got the address. So we've got the spacer here, and then we've got the address, which actually pops in these 4 fields here so that we can fill out the address needed. So that's essentially what the views are. It allows us to have different data populated in a different way. So that's, but these are all built in. Unfortunately, you can't create views at this time. The last section here is the block section. This allows us to add a couple different things here. First is the header. So the header here gives us the ability to give it a title, essentially. We have the ability here in the HTML to write HTML code, which we'll get into in just a little bit. And then sections actually allow us to display different kinds of data differently, depending on values. Oh, I don't have one in here. So we'll touch on this one here just a little bit too. But essentially, you can create sections of data that will only show up based on a condition. One of those conditions could be something to the effect of within an incident when we've got our closed information. So why the incident was closed, what was the resolution for for closing the incident, when was the incident closed, that kind of information. we'll put that into a section and put a condition on it so that if the task is closed, that's when that data will show up. So we can do that. And yeah, so essentially the incident wizard creation and really all of the sections I'm about to show you will allow you to do all of this stuff and demonstrate data in a different way. So the new incident creation wizard, that is when you're hitting the create incident and manually adding an incident. You can build this out to lay it out however you want. There's one thing that you're going to miss over here, and you can see that there is no way to add a data table itself. We don't allow that within the incident wizard, but here in just a second, when I jump into the incident tabs, you'll be able to see that. So let's jump into incident tabs and we'll start actually doing design. All right, so in the incident tabs here, essentially what we're going to have is these are all of the tabs within the incident. Now, as you can see, some of these are grayed out, and that's because if I actually click here, see that the members tab has a tab visibility condition of no. It's not visible at all. Of course, we've got yes, so that we can set it to always be visible. And then the other option is conditional. So you can see here, you've got the eye that shows that it is actually visible. You've got the eye crossed out. The entire thing's gray, stuff like that. Like over here, you've got the eye crossed out. It means it's never visible because it's set to no. And then you've got the eye here where it's visible, but there's this like pathway over here. And that's essentially a condition visibility mark there. So if we click over here, you can actually see that this is set conditionally. And so what this is used for is the QRadar offense details tab does not need to be displayed in every single incident that we deal with. But when we get an incident that gets pushed over from QRadar or any other tool that you're using, there's going to be maybe a certain field, such as the QRadar ID, that has some kind of value. So essentially what the condition is here is when an incident gets pushed over from QRadar, it's going to give the incident a QRadar ID. So that means that the QRadar ID, of course, is going to have a value. So when it has that value, then this tab will be displayed. So that's essentially what we're going to do here is we're only going to show this when it's been pushed over from QRadar and that QRadar ID has a value. What we'll do here, though, is if we wanted to create a new tab, we can hit this plus button here to create a new tab. Of course, we have the add tab down here as well. But since we're on the tab section, I'll go ahead and hit add tab here. And then we can give the name or the tab a name. We can, of course, set the visibility condition here, which I'm just going to go ahead and leave this one set as yes. But if we wanted to add it conditionally, we can, of course, do that. All right, now that we're in this tab here, we have the ability to start to customize this tab however we want. Before we actually dive into customizing this tab, I want to touch on one thing because we have all these different tabs that we can edit here, but there's one tab that's a little unique compared to the other tabs, and that is actually the summary section. And the reason I say it's unique compared to the other tabs is because technically it's actually not a tab. It's a section within the incident creation here. So in here, you can actually see that you've got all these tabs along the top, but there isn't something called summary. That's because the summary is over here on the right-hand side. This is actually displayed whenever you're inside an incident. And essentially, this is summary data that just allows somebody to take a quick look to see what's going on within this incident. So you can design this however you want, put whatever information you want in over here so that somebody can take a quick look and actually see what's going on. But there is one caveat. Anything that is displayed within the summary section is not changeable. And what I mean by that is it's not changeable within the summary section. So you can see here, I've got this owner and it's set to tier 1 analyst. If I wanted to go and change that to maybe myself, I can't change it from the summary section. I have to come over here to case details, which is where I've got the owner information, and then I can click edit, and then of course I can change the owner um, to myself here. So just find myself, and there we go. I've got that saved, or I've got that changed. Now I hit save, and now it'll move that incident, change that incident over here. So this section actually is really good if you want to display information for somebody, but you don't want them to be able to change it. You can toss it in the summary section. They can see the information, but they can't change it unless you, of course, put it in one of your other tabs here. All right, so if we jump back into the customizations and we'll go to the tab that we just created down here. So this is where we can really start to play with the layout and what the incident looks like. So the first couple of things, of course, we have the field section. Like I said before, those are in purple. We can grab anything through, or we can scroll through this, grab whatever we want. Of course, if we want to do something like maybe we're looking for the incident disposition, we can find that by using the search up at the top. And then, of course, you just drag it and drop it. That adds that field to your tab here. The other thing that we have the ability to do is add data tables. I mentioned before that we could create fields. We can create data tables if we want to. We just hit the add data table. You give the data table a name. Test for now. Hit next. You give whatever columns you want. So you can put, different information in the columns here. Call it teams. But I mean, of course, you can name it whatever you want. Of course, you can actually remove something if you want, or you can add a new column as well. So you can add as many columns as you would like. Once you got all your columns added, you hit next. Now, this is where we're going to add change the label if you want to, but you should have set that back here. Of course, it'll automatically create your API name. And then you can choose what type of data this is within this column. And of course, this is basically just what we did before, where we decided what kind of field this was going to be. Same information is going to be asked for down here. And then if we actually click next, every time you click next, it's going to go through a new column. So once we get through all of the columns up here, once we hit next on that last one, then it's going to show us what our data table is going to look like. Now, it is good to note that when you're in this page, you can actually come up here and you can move these things around. Now, what you're going to see here is this actually allows you to choose how big these columns should be. And then essentially these will be your default size for your columns. So every time you load a page, these columns will be set to whatever you chose the size here. Not saying that when you're in an incident, so let's go to the QRadar offense. We've got data tables here. I can, of course, move these around if I want to, but if I logged out and logged back in, this would all be changed back to the default settings. So whatever you want those default settings to be, you can, of course, set them in when you're creating that data table. Or, of course, if you want to edit a data table and go in and do that. Of course, down here below the data tables that are in blue, we've got the views. The views are going to be in red, and I mentioned what those were before, but you can see we've got more options now when we're in the tabs instead of just the incident creation wizard. The last section here is going to be the blocks and headers. So there's a couple things that we can do that are fun here with the headers. You can actually drop the header in here. And when you edit the header and you give it its name, so we can call this the IR Gurus. And what we're going to do here is we've got this option to make it an anchor link. And what that means is if we're in a tab and we want to get to information quickly, then we can actually use that anchor link to drop to that section, wherever that section may be within that tab, very quickly. And I'll show you here, if we go into one of these incidents here, and I go over to my case details, you can see I've got all these different sections here. And if I wanted to go see the MITRE information, I can actually click on the MITRE section and it takes me straight to where all that MITRE information is. That's how the sections work there, or the headers work, I mean. And then, of course, we have the ability to add HTML. So if we drop in HTML, we can do a lot of different things with HTML. For instance, if I wanted to add an image, we can do that. We can add this HTML image. We can save it. We can come back out here and let's jump into, well, let's refresh the page first. Then we'll jump over to test. Now we can see that we've got the IR Gurus logo right there. The other thing we can do, of course, if we want to add maybe an HTML, or not HTML, if we wanted to add a link or something like that within the system, we can drop the HTML block in here. We can hit the edit button, and then we can just drop in HTML code to taking us out to a link. Now that we've got the HTML in here to take us out to the IR Gurus GitHub page, we can click OK. Of course, hit save if we did make a change. And then we go back out to this page. We'll do a refresh since we changed the incident layout. And now you can see I've got the IR Gurus GitHub page here, where now I can click on this and it'll take me out to the GitHub page, where I can go take a look at any of my documentation or any of my playbooks that we've got built. So, feel free to go grab one of those while you're out there. Now we'll jump back into the customization settings. So we can do lots of different things with HTML. Of course, I've seen people put images that they created of their severity matrices, so that the analyst has that directly presented to them, so they can decide how to determine the severity of an incident. So next thing is the sections. So the sections allow us to actually come up here, and I can drop this section here, and then I'll actually move this HTML block into the section. You can see that there's a very faint outline around the section, and then anything inside that is included in that section. And essentially what we can do with sections now is we can come in here and use the configuration tool to add a condition. So when should we show the data that's in this section here? And we'll look for incident disposition. When this is set to confirmed, then we're going to go ahead and show we're going to show this HTML block. So add that section in there, hit save. Now what we can do is we can go up to the incident again, of course, refresh the page, and you're going to see that my guru page disappeared here. That's because the incident disposition is set to unconfirmed. So what we can do is we'll go to edit. We can change this to confirmed. Now you can see it pops right back up for me, and I can see that information again. Once I hit save here, then that guru's page will always show up there. Now I can, of course, click on this, go right back out there, and that's how the sections work. So that's how you build out a tab, and that's how you can start to really change up the layout and the customizations of how you're going to be able to present your data to your analysts within an incident within IR or within IBM SOAR. The next section that we have or the last section we have on this page is going to be the custom incident or the close incident. And so essentially what this allows us to do, you can see here, I already added a couple of things, but we can add information to this data or to this display that will ask the analyst to fill this out before they close an incident. So before, when I was mentioning that you can set the if we set it to on close, then what we can do is add that field to our incident close. And then when the user, when the analyst is actually closing an incident out, they will be presented with this information. So since I've already got this added here, what we can do is we can go into our incident here. And if I go to actions and I go to close incident, it's going to say, it's going to ask me, of course, if I'm sure I want to close this. We'll hit OK. And then now it presents me with the fields that I presented before or that I showed you before. And these are always going to be displayed when I try to close an incident out. That allows you to basically get that information from the analyst before they finish the incident. The last section I have for you is going to be in the phases and tasks. So the reason I bring phases and tasks up is because there is another customization section that you can add or using layouts within a task. So if I go into a task here, the very bottom of any of these tasks, of course, you can edit a task or you can create a new task. But at the very bottom, you've got the task layout. And what this allows you to do is, again, add fields, data tables, different types of views. Of course, you've got less views here, but different types of views, and then any blocks of data that you want to do. And you can pop those over here, and you can change the way that the data is laid out within the task so that maybe your instructions ask them to go look at a certain data table or go look at artifacts or go do something with artifacts. Instead of having the analyst actually jump out of the task that they're working in and jump into another tab to do something and then have to come back to close the tab or to close the incident or whatever, or not the incident, the task, sorry. We can actually just display that information that we want them to work with directly within the task. So to demonstrate that, we can actually jump back into the task or the incident here and jump over to the tasks for this incident. And then you can see here that if I've got this task here and I'm working on this task, if I click into it, got my instructions and all my information here. And if I scroll down, I can see I've got the LDAP data and I've got the CrowdStrike data. And that's directly within the incident. So I don't have to jump out to a different tab within the incident to view this data or do anything with this data. I can also, if I wanted to edit any of these, I can come up here to the top and hit edit. That'll allow me to then edit these data tables. So I can add a new row if I wanted to. If there was a field here, of course, I could change that field as well. And then I just come back up here and hit save. And then if you've got any kind of automations that you kick off from any kind of level. So if I had artifacts here, that it would work from there as well. If I wanted to kick something off from a data table like this, I've got this option down here where I can click it and I can still access all of my automations as well from within the task. All right. So that kind of covers everything that I had to show you guys today for really being able to design and build your incidents within IBM SOAR to allow you to properly display the information you want to your analysts. I hope these videos have been helpful for all of you gurus out there, and I hope they've been helping you use SOAR more efficiently. I would appreciate it if you give me a like and a follow down below. Whether or not these videos have been helpful, please feel free to leave a comment. I definitely appreciate any feedback I get, whether you're doing great or, hey, I think you could improve on this, or even, hey, I need help with this. Can you do a video on this? I would appreciate any of those because that really helps guide this channel on how we can help you moving forward. I appreciate you guys coming out and watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. See you guys.